Hey, what's up everyone? Chad from Alta3 here, and if you are planning on taking the AWS Solutions Architect Exam, then this video is here to help you crush it. So here's how this is going to work. I'm going to show you a series of exam-style questions. I will read the question and show you all the answers. I'll disappear long enough for you to pause the video and choose which answer you think is correct, and then I will return, tell you the correct answer and what the explanation behind it is. And if you like this format, make sure you stick around for the end of the video where I tell you about our new tool, CertCrusher, and how it has hundreds more AWS Solutions Architect questions for you to practice with. All right, pause if you need to, because here comes question number 1. A media streaming service aims to boost the performance and availability of its global platform, which relies on UDP for data transmission. The company needs a solution that allows for easy failover in the event of a regional outage while still using their proprietary DNS system. Which AWS service should they implement? AWS Global Accelerator. So here's the deal with AWS Global Accelerator. It makes your applications, especially those that are using UDP for things like streaming, much faster and super reliable for people all around the world. It gives you these fixed addresses that act as an entry point globally. So if a whole region goes down, Global Accelerator instantly and automatically routes traffic to the next healthy region, and that's called instant regional failover. The best part is that it works independently of your current DNS setup, so you don't have to change anything on your end. Number 2, a company needs to transfer a 2 GB compressed data file daily to Amazon S3 from a remote location. What is the most efficient method to achieve this? So if you need to upload a really big file to Amazon S3 from far away, the most efficient method is to combine 2 services, multi-part upload and S3 transfer acceleration. Multi-part upload basically chops the big file up into smaller pieces, which lets you send them all at the same time in parallel. And that speeds up the transfer dramatically and makes it more reliable. S3 transfer acceleration uses AWS's global network of edge locations to get your data to S3 much faster and much more securely, and it cuts down on that long distance travel time. 3, you are tasked with designing a secure archival system for a financial institution that must adhere to strict compliance regulations. Which approach would you recommend using Amazon S3 Glacier to ensure that data is only accessible with write once, read many, or WORM requirements? When you have strict compliance rules like the write once, read many, WORM requirement, you need a vault lock policy. When you set this policy to compliance mode, the data becomes unchangeable, undeletable for a specified period, even by the account owner. And that's how you can ensure that compliance is met. A logistics company needs to optimize its application to handle a surge in real-time tracking data as its fleet size doubles. Which solution ensures high performance with low latency for frequent data updates and retrievals? When you have an application that needs blazing fast data access like low latency and has to handle huge sudden traffic spikes, then a memory-based database like Amazon Elasticache for Redis is the perfect fit. Because a multi-availability zone deployment, it puts the main and backup copies in different separate data centers. And if the primary one fails, then the backup takes over in seconds, which is super reliable. And by using a read replica caching strategy, you send all those heavy data retrieval requests, or reads, to the copies. And this leaves the main database free to handle the continuous incoming data, the writes, without ever slowing down. A company is planning to set up read replicas for their Amazon RDS database to improve read performance. What should they consider regarding data transfer costs? Generally, moving data within a single AWS region, like between the main database and its copies, is free, but Heads up, if you set up a database copy in a different AWS region, maybe to serve users that are closer to that area, you will incur a data transfer charge for the data that moves between those two regions. A financial institution is hosting an internal application on AWS that requires secure DNS resolution for its on-premises services. What is the best method to achieve this? When you need your applications running in AWS to securely find and talk to your servers that are running in your own data center, that's called hybrid DNS. And to do that, you use Amazon Route 53 Resolver outbound endpoints. Just think of the endpoint as a secure bridge that allows your AWS apps to send requests for internal server names directly to your own on-premises DNS servers. It ensures that all your services can find each other no matter where they're located. A media company is experiencing a surge in traffic to its video streaming service, leading to increased data transfer costs from their Amazon S3 storage. As a solutions architect, what strategy can you implement to minimize these costs while ensuring quick content delivery to users? To cut down on data transfer costs while delivering content super fast, you should absolutely use a content delivery network, a CDN, like Amazon CloudFront. CloudFront stores copies of your content, like videos, in many different locations worldwide, which are all closer to your users. So, for instance, when a user asks for a video, they get it from the closest spot instead of pulling it all the way from your main Amazon S3 storage. AWS makes it cheaper to move the data from S3 to CloudFront, and then you only pay for the final fast delivery to the user, which is a much more cost-effective model. A company needs a shared file system that can be accessed by both Windows and Linux servers, and AWS and maintaining Windows-specific features like NTFS permissions and integration with Active Directory. Which AWS service should they use? Amazon FSx for Windows File Server is a fully managed service that gives you a dedicated Windows file server in the cloud. And it's awesome because it natively supports key Windows features like server message block or SMB protocol, NTFS permissions, and easy integration with Active Directory. That makes it the perfect choice for environments that have both Windows and Linux computers, as they can all share files using that standard SMB protocol. A logistics company needs to ensure that their package tracking notifications are processed in the exact order they are received, with a peak throughput of 1,000 notifications per second. Which solution should they implement using Amazon SQS? So for tasks like package tracking, where the exact order of events matters, you must use an Amazon SQS FIFO, first in, first out queue. And this ensures that messages are processed in the order that they arrive. So to handle a massive load, like 1,000 messages per second, then you would use the queue's batching feature. Batching lets you group multiple messages into one single request, which drastically increases the total number of messages that the queue can handle every second. A logistics company is revamping its package tracking system to handle real-time data updates. The IT department needs a NoSQL database that provides low latency access, can scale out easily, and operates without server management. Which database solution should they choose? Amazon DynamoDB is the absolute best choice here. It's a fully managed serverless database, which means that it handles all the scaling and server maintenance just automatically. And it's built for applications that need incredibly fast responses with low latency and the ability to grow to virtually any size while maintaining consistent performance. And it's exactly what a real-time tracking system needs to handle constant, unpredictable data updates. A financial institution wants to modernize its application infrastructure while ensuring that all sensitive customer data remains within its own data centers. Which AWS service should the institution implement to achieve this goal? The ultimate solution for running modern applications while keeping the data right there in your own facility is AWS Outposts. Outposts is physical hardware that AWS installs in your data center, which allows you to run certain AWS services locally. And by deploying an Outposts rack and using a container service like Amazon EKS on it, you can modernize your apps, you can keep your sensitive data on-prem to meet data residency compliance rules, and you can still manage everything just using your regular old AWS tools. A company has duplicated a Amazon machine image, an AMI, from region A to region B. What resources are now present in region B? So when you copy an AMI to a new region, AWS actually creates two different things in that new region. One is a new copy of the AMI itself, and the second is an EBS snapshot, like a backup of the main disk that the new AMI uses. And this setup ensures that you have everything necessary in the new region to immediately start up a brand new server instance. A tech startup aims to separate its development, staging, and production environments by utilizing distinct AWS accounts. They seek a solution that allows for centralized management of networking, security, and account setup across all their accounts, which must use best practices and be established quickly. Which approach best fulfills these requirements while keeping operational complexity low? Okay, so if you want to really quickly set up a secure multi-account environment that follows all the best practices and you don't have to do a ton of manual work, the answer is AWS Control Tower. And the reason why is because it creates a secure foundation for all your accounts. And for networking, the best practice is to put the main components in a separate networking account. And then you use your AWS Resource Access Manager to safely share key parts of that network with whatever your other accounts may be, like dev, staging, production. And this keeps management central, but allows everyone to use the shared network resources. A graphic design company is seeking a managed file storage solution on AWS for their collaborative editing software that requires support for the SMB protocol with minimal setup and maintenance. Which AWS service should they choose? Amazon FSx for Windows File Server is a fully managed service that gives you a dedicated cloud-based Windows file server, and it fully supports SMB protocol that Windows machines use to share files. And since AWS handles all of the server maintenance, the backups, the scaling, and all that jazz, what that translates into is just minimal setup and maintenance work for the design team. A company is experiencing issues with accessing application logs after their EC2 instances, which are managed by an auto-scaling group, are terminated. What is the best approach to ensure log availability for analysis even after instance termination? When servers are automatically shut down by an auto-scaling group, then any logs that are stored on them are just immediately lost. So to save all your logs so you can review them later, you need to install the Amazon CloudWatch Logs agent on every server. And this agent, it automatically sends just a continuous stream of the server's log files to the CloudWatch Logs, which ensures that they're saved securely and that they're available for analysis even after the original server is completely gone. A company runs a read-intensive application using AWS Lambda, Amazon API Gateway, and Amazon Aurora. They want to cut costs and enhance performance with minimal adjustments. What is the most effective strategy? If your application has users that are just constantly asking for the same data, like read intensive, then the quickest way to boost performance and cut costs is to use a cache. And by enabling caching in Amazon API Gateway, then the system stores a temporary copy of the common responses. This means that the API Gateway can serve the response instantly from the cache instead of having to run the Lambda function and query the Aurora database every single time, which can get really expensive. And that just dramatically reduces the workload on your backend services, which saves a lot of money and also makes the application run much faster. A company needs a cost-effective cloud storage solution that supports NFS compatibility and automatically moves less frequently accessed data to cheaper storage. What option should they use? The AWS Storage Gateway File Gateway is the ideal choice for connecting your on-prem applications to cloud storage. Basically, it acts as a local file share. It uses the NFS protocol, but it stores the actual data in Amazon S3. Once the data is in S3, you can then set up S3 lifecycle policies to just automatically shift files that haven't been touched recently from standard S3. And you can move it to much cheaper archival storage like Glacier. And this delivers both the file sharing compatibility and the cost savings for rarely accessed files. A company needs to efficiently synchronize newly generated media files from their local servers to an Amazon EFS file system as part of their cloud migration strategy. What is the most effective method to achieve this? So when you need to move a large amount of file data from your office to the cloud, the most reliable and fastest tool is AWS DataSync. You would just install a small DataSync agent on your local network to read the files, and then DataSync is optimized to transfer only the changed data. It handles any network interruptions and uses a secure connection like AWS Direct Connect to quickly move the files to the cloud. You can schedule it, it can run daily to keep your local servers and your Amazon EFS synchronized. How can instances located in private subnets be configured to access the internet securely? Servers in a private subnet shouldn't be directly accessible from the internet, but they still need to connect out for updates. So to do this safely, they must use a NAT gateway. The NAT gateway lives in a separate internet-facing subnet, and it acts as like a go-between. It lets traffic go out and then replies come back in, but it blocks any traffic from the internet that might be trying to connect in. For a system that needs high reliability, you should always place a separate NAT gateway in each of your data centers or availability zones. A retail company experiences unpredictable spikes in online orders during flash sales. Which strategy will enhance the application's ability to handle those surges effectively? The best way to manage unpredictable traffic spikes is with a service that automatically adds or removes servers based on the actual workload. And that, of course, is called dynamic scaling. And you can link your auto scaling group directly to the queue that's holding the incoming orders, so like the SQS queue. And by using a target tracking policy to monitor the number of messages that are waiting in that queue, then the system can automatically launch more servers before things get too overloaded. And this ensures that your application is always perfectly sized, no matter how many orders you get in a big rush. A company needs to implement a system for collecting customer feedback and performing sentiment analysis, ensuring the data is retained for 1 year. What is the most efficient and scalable solution? So the answer here is A, and the reason why is because this solution just uses an excellent combination of serverless services that work together really, really well. The API gateway will create a scalable door for all the feedback. An SQS queue can securely and reliably hold on to those incoming messages. And a Lambda function processes the message, and it uses Amazon Comprehend for analysis, because remember, we need to determine sentiment, and then saves the result in a DynamoDB database. And then DynamoDB's TTL, time to live feature, automatically deletes the data after your required 365 days, like we said in the question. And what that does is that it keeps costs low, and it ensures that only necessary data is retained. A tech startup has built a real-time analytics platform using AWS Lambda and Amazon API Gateway. The platform relies on an Amazon RDS MySQL database for storing processed data. Recently, the platform has seen a surge in user activity, leading to increased read operations on the main database. Developers want to reduce the load on the primary database and improve read performance without modifying the existing application logic. As a solutions architect, what solution would you propose? So when your database is overloaded primarily by users that are trying to read your data, best fix is to create read replicas. And these are these up-to-date copies of your main database that you can offload all of your read traffic to. And by sending most of those requests to the replicas, that just dramatically reduces stress on the main database and just instantly boosts performance without needing to rewrite any of your core application code. A financial services firm operates a transaction processing system using an Amazon DynamoDB table. The operations team has noticed that sometimes erroneous transactions are recorded. When such errors are identified, the team needs to quickly revert the table to its previous state. Which solution should be implemented? So when you got DynamoDB and you need to quickly undo a mistake, the best feature to use is point-in-time recovery, or PITR. And with that enabled, you can basically rewind your entire table to just any second within the last 35 days. This is the fastest and the most effective way to eliminate, a batch of bad transactions in this example, and just instantly return the table back to its clean slate before the error occurred. A tech startup is developing a real-time analytics platform for IoT devices that requires a fully serverless architecture to handle fluctuating data loads. Which combination of AWS services should they use to efficiently process incoming data? So the answer here is A, and here's why. So Amazon SQS acts as like a reliable waiting area. It sets up a queue to absorb the data, which prevents the rest of the system from becoming overwhelmed. AWS Lambda is a serverless compute service that automatically scales to process the messages from that queue. The results are stored in Amazon DynamoDB, which is a serverless database, and it's got that high scalability and low latency that you need for real-time analytics. And the entire setup that I've described runs without any server management at all from your team. A data analytics company needs to manage multiple processing jobs on Amazon ECS using EC2 instances. Each job generates approximately 20 megabytes of data, and there could be hundreds of jobs running simultaneously. The total storage requirement is expected to remain under 1 terabyte as older data is removed. The company requires a solution that supports frequent read and write operations efficiently. As a solutions architect, what would you recommend to ensure optimal performance? All right, so we've got a scenario where we have a lot of computing jobs that need to read and write to the same shared storage very frequently and very quickly. The best solution is an Amazon EFS or Elastic file system with provisioned throughput. So Amazon EFS, it's a simple, scalable file storage that many servers can access at the same time. And by using provision throughput, you guarantee a really specific high data transfer speed, regardless of how much data is actually stored. And this ensures that all those simultaneous jobs get consistent, fast performance that they need for frequent data work. A company is planning a blue-green deployment strategy for their mobile application, which is used by a large number of users. To divert the majority of live traffic from the old environment to the new one, what solution would you suggest to ensure a smooth transition of traffic between the old and new environments within a 48-hour window? So when you run a blue-green deployment, you have two full application environments, and to switch traffic between them seamlessly, you would use AWS Global Accelerator. It gives your users two fixed addresses, and then just by simply changing where those addresses point to, like from the old servers to the new ones, then you get an instant switch. That's way better than traditional DNS, which can take hours to update everywhere, and it makes the transition really smooth for your users. What is a secure way for an AWS Lambda function to connect to an Amazon RDS PostgreSQL instance without embedding static credentials? The most secure way to connect is through an IAM database authentication. And what this method does is that it uses temporary security permissions from your AWS IAM or Identity and Access Management service. And that's great because you don't have to embed a permanent username and password directly into the Lambda's function code. So what the Lambda function does is that it just asks AWS for like a really, short-lived login token. And that makes the connection far more secure and compliant. A financial services firm needs to establish a secure connection from its private VPC to a third-party vendor's Amazon RDS for PostgreSQL instance located in the vendor's AWS account. The firm's VPC does not have internet access, direct connect, or VPN connections. Which solution ensures secure and private access to the RDS database while keeping the setup straightforward and adhering to security protocols? So the most private and secure way for your network to reach a service in someone else's AWS account, like the vendors, without ever touching public internet is through AWS PrivateLink. The vendor just needs to put up a simple load balancer, an NLB, in front of their database. Then, at that point, you can use PrivateLink to create a private network connection, which is called a VPC endpoint, that shows up right inside of your VPC. Your applications can then connect directly to the vendor's database using that private endpoint. And that keeps the whole setup simple, secure, and fully private. A company is experiencing high read latency with its DynamoDB tables and seeks a solution to enhance read performance. Which AWS service should they implement to achieve this? Amazon DynamoDB Accelerator, or DAX. What that is it's a specialized memory-based cache. It sits right in front of your DynamoDB tables. And since reading from memory is incredibly fast, I mean, we're talking microsecond speed here, DAX just automatically boosts the read performance of your DynamoDB tables. And that's going to make your app feel a whole lot faster, especially for data that's being really frequently requested. A company is experiencing high read traffic on its Amazon Aurora database due to repeated queries. What is the most cost-effective strategy to alleviate this pressure? All right, so if you got a traditional database like Amazon Aurora and it's just getting hit with a ton of repeated requests, then the most cost-effective solution is to just put in a fast, simple, in-memory cache. And Amazon Elasticache for Redis is the perfect fit. What would happen is that your app would check the Redis cache first. And if the data is there, then it's served instantly from memory. And then the system can avoid making those expensive requests to the Aurora database. That just drastically reduces the workload and the cost of like maintaining Aurora database and makes the application's responses a lot faster too. A media company needs to securely store frequently accessed video files in Amazon S3. They want to minimize encryption costs while using AWS KMS for server-side encryption. What strategy should they implement? So when you encrypt files in Amazon S3 using AWS KMS key management service, then you usually pay a small charge every time that KMS generates an encryption key for each file. But by turning on S3 bucket keys, S3 uses a single shared key for all the files in that storage area for a period of time. And that, of course, significantly reduces the number of times that S3 has to call KMS for a new key, which cuts down on encryption costs and also maintains KMS's high security. In AWS Identity and Access Management, IAM, which type of policy is specifically used to define which entities can assume a role? So the trust policy is the document that just clearly states like what user, what service, what other AWS account is allowed to take on a particular role. And it's the essential part of the role that defines who can use temporary security permissions. What is the most effective method to securely link a company's internal network to its AWS infrastructure, ensuring encryption at both the transport and application layers, while still allowing detailed security management? All right, so if you're looking to securely connect an on-prem network to a private network on AWS, then the standard method is AWS site-to-site VPN. The VPN automatically creates a secure tunnel. It provides a transport layer encryption using standard protocols. And for the second layer of security, detailed access control, then you can use security groups and network ACLs within AWS. And these tools, they would allow you to really precisely manage exactly which traffic and which servers are allowed to talk to each other, which fully meets these detailed security requirements. In a scenario where an auto-scaling group is configured to operate across two availability zones, and one zone has more instances than the other, what action does the default termination policy take during a scale-in event? Okay, so when an auto-scaling group needs to shut down servers, then the default policy is designed to keep the number of servers balanced across all of your separate data centers. So therefore, it will always prioritize deleting servers from the availability zone, like the region that currently has the most running servers. And within that server, within that zone, it will actually pick the server that's been running the longest, like the oldest instance, and that's the one that it will terminate. A media streaming service is planning to transition its main application to a set of Amazon EC2 instances. The company requires a solution that supports high availability and can perform content-based routing. As a solutions architect, what would you recommend? So the best pairing for high availability and smart traffic steering is the application load balancer with an auto scaling group. So the application load balancer, or ALB, it's a smart tool, and it can make routing decisions based on the content of the user's request, like the path and the web address, which is called content-based routing. And an auto scaling group, it automatically places servers across multiple separate data centers and will instantly replace any server that fails, which makes your entire system highly resilient. A company wants to ensure that their AWS infrastructure remains compliant with internal security policies and needs to keep a record of all configuration changes. As a solutions architect, which service would you suggest to achieve this? So AWS Config is the perfect service for this. It's designed to just constantly track and record every single change that's made to the configuration of your AWS resources. And then it compares those changes against your required security rules. And that just gives you this complete searchable history of all the changes, which is great to provide evidence for auditors to confirm that you're following your internal security policies. How can you ensure that only specific users can access content served by Amazon CloudFront? All right, if you want to make sure that only specific authorized users can access content that's delivered through CloudFront, you can use signed URLs or signed cookies. And what those are is that they're special web addresses that are only valid for a limited time or for specific people. And that lets you grant temporary access to your files without having to actually change any file permissions, which ensures that only authorized users are the ones that get to view your content. A company needs to develop a custom application that can handle and analyze real-time data streams for its specialized operations. Which AWS service should be recommended to ensure efficient processing and scalability? Amazon Kinesis Data Streams. And what that is, it's a specialized service. It's built for managing just a continuous flood of data from many different sources, like from logs or from IoT devices. And what it does is that it really efficiently collects, stores, processes all those data streams, and it does it in real time. And this capability is just totally essential for immediate analysis and for building scalable applications that can handle a huge amount of incoming data. You are tasked with designing a solution for a financial analytics firm that requires rapid data processing and high-speed communication between compute nodes on AWS. Which deployment strategy should you choose to achieve optimal network performance? So when you absolutely need the fastest speed and the lowest delay for server-to-server communication, especially for intensive tasks like financial and analytics, then your best choice is a cluster placement group. And what that does is that it guarantees that all your servers are launched physically close together on the same network switch within one data center and one availability zone, which just minimizes the travel time for data between them, which maximizes speed. A company has a web application running on an Amazon EC2 instance that needs to access a DynamoDB table. Which method is most secure and recommended to configure access to ensure secure communication between the EC2 instance and DynamoDB? So the most secure and definitely the recommended way to go about doing this is to use an IAM role. So an IAM role is where you create a set of permissions that really specifically states like, this server is allowed to use DynamoDB. Rah. And then what you do is you would attach that role to the EC2 instance using an instance profile. And this is way safer than embedding login details directly on the server because it relies on temporary managed credentials and is AWS's security best practice. A tech company is developing a new semiconductor and needs a solution to enhance the performance of their electronic design automation or EDA workflows. Which AWS service should they use to efficiently manage high-speed data processing and storage for frequently asked data, access data, while also providing economical storage for less frequently accessed data? The answer is Amazon FSx for Lustre. And what that is, it's a file system that's specifically built for incredibly fast computing workloads like EDAs, electronic design automation. And it provides just super fast storage for the data that you're actively working on. And also importantly, It also lets you link to cheaper S3 storage for data that's needed less often, like it was mentioned in the question, which makes it a complete and cost-effective solution for specialized high-performance needs. An educational institution plans to migrate its archived data from local servers to a cloud-based POSIX-compliant file storage solution on AWS. The data will be retrieved only once annually for a week-long review. As an AWS Solutions Architect, which AWS service would you recommend to minimize costs? So Amazon EFS with infrequent access is the answer. Just EFS is the go-to for POSIX compliant file storage. And EFS IA is designed for files that are accessed only a few times a year. And what that does is that it makes a much lower storage price. And that is kind of the key factor we're looking at here for minimizing your overall costs. A company is looking to enhance the performance of its input-output intensive applications running on Amazon EC2. Which AWS storage solution should be recommended for achieving high performance while keeping costs low, especially when data persistence is not a requirement? Definitely the most efficient and cheapest option here is Instance Store. And the reason why is that Instance Store, it's a temporary hard drive that's physically attached to the server itself, and that gives you just top tier data transfer speeds. And since the storage is included in the server's cost and that the data is automatically wiped whenever the server is shut down, it provides high performance, temporary, and perhaps most importantly, cost-effective solution. A company is using an auto-scaling group to manage its fleet of EC2 instances. Despite some instances being marked as unhealthy, they are not being terminated. What could be the reason for this behavior? So when a new server is started by an auto-scaling group, there's this set period called the health check grace period, which is before the system starts and checks the server's health. And the auto-scaling group, it gives the new server time to boot up and load the application. But if the server becomes unhealthy during that grace period, then the auto-scaling group just ignores the failure and will not terminate it because it's just assuming that it needs just a little more time to get up and running. You are tasked with designing a robust architecture for a secure access point to your private network on AWS. Which solution would you implement to ensure high availability for this access point? So in this situation, the best service to use is a network load balancer, an NLB. And NLBs, they're built to handle huge amounts of traffic with like almost no delay. And you can put an NLB in front of secure gateway servers like Bastion hosts, just in multiple data centers. And it will automatically just distribute all incoming connections across all the healthy gateways. And that just guarantees that the access point is always available. A company wants to ensure all its Amazon S3 buckets have versioning enabled to protect against accidental data loss. What is the most efficient method to identify buckets without versioning while keeping administrative tasks to a minimum? So the most efficient way to get a bird's eye view of your storage across all your accounts and all your regions without a lot of tedious work is to use Amazon S3 Storage Lens. And by turning on the advanced metrics feature, Storage Lens generates a report that flags every storage location, like every bucket, that does not have versioning enabled. And that just makes it super fast and super easy to find and fix any compliance issues. Which AWS service is most suitable for executing SQL queries on data stored in an Amazon S3 data lake to ensure data integrity while minimizing costs and maintenance efforts? So if your data is sitting in an S3 data lake and you want to ask it questions using SQL, then the perfect tool is Amazon Athena. And Athena is a serverless service, which means you don't have to worry about setting up or maintaining any servers. And it lets you run SQL queries directly on the data that's in the S3. You would only pay for the amount of data that the query actually reads, which is what makes it a really cost-effective and a low-maintenance way to perform your analysis. You are tasked with preparing an e-commerce platform for a major promotional event that is expected to cause a surge in user activity. Which strategy would you implement to ensure the platform can handle a sudden increase in traffic? The single most important strategy for handling a sudden massive rush of user activity is to use an auto-scaling group. It's specifically designed to monitor your server's workload, and it'll automatically launch new EC2 instances to just absorb that traffic surge. And then when the event is over, it automatically reduces that number of servers down, which saves on costs, and ensures that the platform stays highly available, but still performs well throughout that entire promotion that's being described. An organization is migrating its directory-dependent applications to AWS and requires a solution that can integrate with their existing on-prem Microsoft Active Directory. Which AWS service should they use to establish this integration? Most appropriate service here is AWS Managed Microsoft AD. And that is a fully managed AD service that's provided by AWS. And it's designed to very easily just integrate with your existing AD that's running in your own data center. And that allows your applications on AWS to just use the same user accounts and security settings that you already have. In a cloud environment, a web application is experiencing downtime because its auto-scaling group is not replacing an instance marked as unhealthy by the load balancer. What could be the reason for this issue? So of the three here, this is probably the best one. The problem here is a mismatch in how the two services are checking for problems. The load balancer, it checks the health of the application that's running on the server and then marks it as unhealthy. However, if the auto-scaling group is only using default EC2 instance status checks, and that only checks if the virtual server is running, not if the application is broken, then it will incorrectly see the server as healthy and then will not replace it. You need to tell the auto-scaling group to use the load balancer's health checks. A company operates a web application primarily accessed by users in the United States. What is the most effective approach to enhance the application's availability? All right, so the most effective strategy to ensure that an app is always up and running is to spread the core components across multiple data centers, which of course are called availability zones or AZs. So what you do is you deploy your EC2 instances across two AZs with an elastic load balancer, and that will handle traffic and failover. You would use Amazon RDS multi-AZ for the database, which guarantees that if the primary copy fails in one AZ, then a perfectly replicated copy in another AZ is ready to take over instantly. A company has an IAM policy that restricts all EC2 operations unless they occur in the US East 1 region. However, it permits the termination of EC2 instances if the request originates from an IP address within the /24 range. Which statement accurately describes the permissions granted by this policy? All right, so this policy combines two security rules. Rule number one, all server actions are only allowed in the US East 1 region. And rule number two, any deletion of a server is only allowed if the request comes from an internal secure IP range inside of /24. So because those two conditions must both be true, a user whose computer has an IP address that's inside of that range can terminate a server, but only if that server is located in the US East 1 region. A financial services company needs to protect its customer-facing web application from DDoS attacks while ensuring detailed logging for compliance audits. The solution should require minimal changes to the current AWS setup. What is the most suitable approach? So, for serious protection against major attacks like DDoS and strict logging for compliance, AWS Shield Advanced is your strongest defense here. It provides great protection against nearly all attack types. It also gives you access to the AWS DDoS response team, the DRT, for assistance during a crisis. And most importantly, for compliance, it provides really detailed metrics and logging of the attacks, all with minimal changes to your current application setup. Can't beat that. You are tasked with ensuring that a shared document on Amazon EFS is accessible to teams located in different AWS regions while keeping management efforts low. What is the best approach to achieve this? Okay, so while EFS is a fantastic file system, it's really only designed to be used within a single AWS region. So for simple, globally accessible storage that needs very little management, the best solution is just move the files to an Amazon S3, which S3s, they're built to provide secure, durable, highly available storage that can be accessed from anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter if these are different regions, and really just requires minimal management effort. A company is deploying two sets of EC2 instances using configuration template A and configuration template B. What is true about the tenancy of these instances? So the way that the underlying physical hardware gets shared is determined by the settings in your configuration template or in the VPC settings. And since both sets of servers are being launched with a specific template that we assume is set to dedicated tenancy, then all those servers will run on hardware that is physically reserved just for your exclusive use. What action should be taken to ensure secure transmission of data between an application and its database? So to keep data completely private as it goes between your app and your database, you absolutely must turn on SSL TLS encryption. And what that does is that it creates a secure encrypted tunnel for all your data. Other security tools like security groups, they only manage who can access the database, but they don't actually scramble the data like SSL and TLS does. A company experiences predictable traffic surges on their e-commerce platform at the end of each month. As a solutions architect, which strategy would you recommend to ensure their Amazon EC2 instances scale appropriately during these peak periods? Okay, so when you know for a fact that traffic spikes are going to happen at the exact same time every month, then they're very predictable. And for those predictable events, the most reliable strategy is to use a scheduled action in your auto-scaling group. You simply set a rule to automatically increase the number of running servers to a specific count right before the peak demand hits. And what that does is it guarantees that the system is fully prepared in advance, which is much better than waiting for the traffic to start increasing before you actually start doing anything. Great job powering through all those questions, and as you can see here, we have earned a 100%, along with a breakdown how we did per domain, which is on the AWS Solutions Architect Exam, as well as a review of all of the questions, the correct answers, and their explanations. So the tool that we used in this video and is on my screen right now is called CertCrusher. And as you can see, we just did one of the several practice exams for the AWS Solutions Architect Exam. While we just completed practice mode, where we could see the correct answer after every single question is answered, there's also simulation mode, which will actually have a timer, and as we select the correct answers or incorrect, we don't actually find out until after we have finished the exam. This can give you a very realistic experience that can help you be very confident to take your exam. And it's not just AWS, we've got Security Plus, Azure, Terraform, Google Cloud, CEH, CISSP, you name it. So do yourself a favor and hit CertCrusher right now. The link is down inside of the description. I've been Chad with Alta 3. Go crush that cert, and I'll see you in the next one.